Okay, now in this lesson we're going to talk about deconstructors. So a deconstructor in pretty much any object-oriented programming language, actually in fact I can't think of one that doesn't use deconstructors. A deconstructor is used to destroy an object after you finish using it. And the reason for that is primarily to release or free up the computer memory that's used to store the object's properties, fields, and other related data. And a second reason for using deconstructors is to perform some kind of cleanup or do something or run an algorithm that you, the developer, define after the object is finished. So let me start with an example of how a deconstructor might actually work by playing a video game. And you guessed it, it's Pac-Man. And then what we'll do is I'll show you how to use deconstructors in Java. Okay, so let's get started with an example. So I'm going to go to play Pac-Man. So I'm going to start the game. It's going to be noise. Oops. Okay, hang on. Okay, now look at this. When you look at this game, Pac-Man, have you ever wondered if you haven't played Pac-Man before? Actually, let me just play it while I. Oops. Okay, so when Pac-Man finished eating all the dots on the screen, what happens is the game goes to the next level. And I'm not gonna sit here and play the game until I eat all the dots, but just trust me, okay? So if you haven't played Pac-Man before, you might want to try it. So when all the dots on the screen are eaten up, the game goes to the next level. Pretty straightforward. Have you ever wondered how it does this? Have you ever wondered how this happens? Well, what could possibly happen is, I'm going to pause it here, is each dot on that screen is an object. Okay? That makes sense because the dots are all the same shape, they look the same. The only thing that's really different about the dots is they have a different XY location on the Pac-Man grid. So a class called dot defines what the dot does, basically nothing. And then when you create the dot, when a new game is started, it instantiates probably about what 200 or 300. Let's say 300 different dots. Okay. So when it creates the dots, when it creates 300 dots, we have a variable called maybe total dots. Total dots is equal. Oops, almost died there. Total dots is equal to 300. So total dots equals 300. Now every time I eat a dot, all right, I destroy that dot object. Okay, now they're really pissed off because they're getting really fast here. So now every time I eat a dot, I destroy a dot object. And every time I destroy an object, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a deconstructor. And when I run a deconstructor, what I'm doing is I'm clearing the memory. When I run a deconstructor, I'm clearing that memory of the data associated with the the fields and properties associated with the dot. In this case, it's mostly the X and Y location. Now listen carefully. When I run the deconstructor, every time I eat a dot, I'm also doing another thing. I'm going to go total dots equals total dots minus 1. And then I'm going to go, if total dots is equal to 0, then go to the next level. Else, continue the game. Now, you might want to rewind that and think about this for a second. So, that is kind of a practical use of a deconstructor. Every time I eat a dot, I clear it from memory, and I clear the XY location of it from memory. And also what I do is I decrement, or I go total dots equals total dots minus 1. And then if total dots is equal to 0, then go to the next level. Okay? Now you might say to yourself, well, Pac-Man's a pretty simple game, and the data is so small. I mean, my computer is like, I have a quad core, you know, AMD Athlon game machine with 1,000,000 gigabytes of memory. But Pac-Man can also be played on one of those little like handheld consoles that are like from the 1980s, right? And they had like little or hardly any memory at all. So it actually is important to clear the memory every time, clear the memory of objects that you're no longer using. It's actually quite important. Okay, with that being said, let's talk about how deconstructors are used in Java, and it's actually the most complicated, simple thing that you've ever seen. So let's get started.